Es un gusto para la academia, darles nuevamente la bienvenida a otro miércoles en casa con el doctor Jaime Ederson. Hemos preparado para ti una charla muy especial, ya que contamos con la presencia de un invitado de honor, el doctor Michael Glick. El doctor Michael Glick es un profesor en la Escuela Dental de Medicina de la Universidad de Buffalo en Nueva York y autor de más de 300 publicaciones. Fue también presidente de The American Board of Oral Medicine y actualmente es editor en jefe de The Journal American Association. Siguiendo con la línea de información relevante por el actual contexto ante el COVID-19, el día de hoy abordaremos el tema la odontología durante y después de COVID-19. Recuerden que pueden hacernos preguntas en vivo, ya que nuestro invitado amablemente estará respondiendo sus dudas. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales y por supuesto comparte este video. Sin más preámbulos, comenzamos.
Hola a todos los que nos están escuchando en español. Hello to everybody who is listening to us or seeing us through either Zoom or Facebook Live. I've been doing these lectures for the past 3 weeks, but it was only myself. And then last week, I called our good friend, Michael Glick, who accepted to be with us this morning. Como ustedes saben, estamos haciendo estas pláticas ya 3 semanas anteriores, hablando del tema del COVID, y desde la semana pasada invitamos a nuestro buen amigo, al doctor Michael Glick, a que participe con nosotros el día de hoy. Hello, Michael.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too, and to everybody who's listening. Some people are in Mexico. We already have 104 people that have joined the session. And remember, if you cannot go in, you can always try Facebook Live. You just find IDA Academia, ID Academia, and it's free. You can go in, and if by some reason you couldn't listen or you want to share it with some friends, you can share it afterwards. When the lecture is over, it's going to stay there in Facebook Live. Also, you'll find it in mine. Para todas las personas que no lo puedan ver o que ustedes quieran compartirlo con ellos, la plática se va a quedar grabada en Facebook Live. Se va a quedar tanto en IDE Academia como en mi Facebook personal. So, Michael, it's enough for me doing the talking. Now it's really up to you. What are your first impressions on this pandemic that it's affecting every little corner of the world, but particularly dentistry? ¿Qué piensas, Michael, de esta pandemia que está afectando a toda la vida, pero sobre todo a la odontología?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Happy to come and speak here, rather than you speaking to yourself, as you mentioned before. So it's good to have two people on, is my assumption. So first of all, this is a scourge, this is a plague, and no question about it. The latest data that we have, with million plus people that have been infected, with death over 60,000, and it just keeps going, obviously. So we play a role, I think, in this pandemic in many ways, and a role that sort of is an opportunity as much as anything else. And what I would like to do is to see if I can sort of elaborate on what I mean, that this might be also an opportunity, as well as how our profession will change in the future.
Bueno, nos dice Michael que en efecto esto está afectando a todo el mundo, en especial a la odontología, y como en todas las crisis se puede hacer de esto algo malo o simplemente crear nuevas oportunidades hacia el futuro.
So first of all, we have always been a trusted resource to our patients and our communities. And this provides us another opportunity to bring the scientific information to patients and to other individuals that are responding to this epidemic, maybe more emotionally than scientifically.
Aquí, como les decía, esto puede ser una oportunidad, ya que está moviendo no nada más a la ciencia, esa es la que, digamos, vendría un poco más lento, pero sí a la parte emocional. Let me just make an announcement, Michael. if you have friends that are trying to get in, because I'm getting a lot of WhatsApps that they cannot go in. Probably there is a 100 top for connections, so people can go in ID Academia and listen to it. Las personas que me están escribiendo muchas personas que ya no pueden entrar porque el cupo se llenó, nos pueden seguir por Facebook Live en ID Academia. Sorry, go on.
It's okay. So, so one point is that we can become a source and resource to our patients.
Nos podemos volver una fuente para nuestros pacientes de conocimiento.
And the second thing, there are a lot of misconceptions and not really facts out there that people sort of spin into more conspiracies than anything else. And
hay allá afuera una gran cantidad de teorías conspiracionales que yo considero que no tienen sentido, pero también hay poca ciencia, y cuando no existe suficiente ciencia, esos espacios son ocupados por mitos y teorías de conspiración.
So here again, if we can get the right information to our health professionals, our dental healthcare professionals, we again can help to differentiate, to parse the facts from the fiction.
Y es a través de la ciencia que podremos separar la ficción de la realidad, de los datos.
Also, right now, at least in the United States and many other countries, we have been restricted to the type of dental care we can provide to our patients.
En Estados Unidos y en otros países ha sido restringida la cantidad de odontología que podemos brindarles a nuestros pacientes.
So therefore, we have an opportunity to help other healthcare professionals that care for those patients, to help them and provide them with personal protective equipment that we have in our offices.
Y una manera en que hemos estado ayudando los odontólogos, han estado ayudando los odontólogos en Estados Unidos, es aportar lo que tienen de barreras de protección, ya que no las están usando, para que sean utilizadas por nuestros compañeros, los médicos que están atendiendo esta crisis.
And again, the type of dental care that we're providing today has become, as I mentioned before, very restricted. So in the United States, and I know many other countries as well, we only provide urgent care and emergency care.
Lo que están haciendo en Estados Unidos y también en muchas partes del mundo es solamente prestar servicios de emergencia o muy urgentes.
Yeah, so urgent care are those type of procedures that you need to institute in order to save lives. So those are things that otherwise could potentially kill the patient. Those are the urgent cares.
Urgentes son aquellos procedimientos que de no hacerlos pueden poner en riesgo la vida de los pacientes.
While emergency care is the run-of-the-mill, you know, a little toothache, a little bit of bleeding, a crown came out, you need to fix it. Those are the emergency cares. So, but we differentiate between urgent and emergency care.
Y los casos de emergencia son aquellos de dolor, de sangrado de encías y probablemente de que se despegó una corona. Esos son los únicos servicios que en realidad debemos considerar de emergencia, y por eso separamos lo que es una emergencia de lo que es urgente.
At the present time here in the United States, the American Dental Association has recommended and support that we don't change these rules at least until April 30th.
Y en Estados Unidos se ha acordado a través de la Asociación Dental Americana de no cambiar esta situación hasta el 30 de abril.
However, I conducted a webinar with the Norwegian Dental Association this morning, and they are going to stop restrictions already April 20th.
Sin embargo, hoy tuve un webinar con la Asociación Dental de Noruega y ellos piensan que lo harán el 17, levantarán estas restricciones el 17 de abril.
But it all depends on the progression of the disease itself in every single country. And I'm going to get to that in a moment, but every country probably needs to make their own decisions on when these changes need to occur.
Y esto obviamente varía de un país a otro, y precisamente porque cada país ha tenido un desarrollo diferente de la cantidad de casos positivos y muertos.
So the question then becomes, can we do things differently that we have not done before? And one of the most important part of this epidemic is to find out how many people are infected and who is infected.
Una de las cosas más importantes para poder entender y controlar esta pandemia es saber cuántas gentes ya se infectaron o están infectadas.
And I believe that we have both the facilities and expertise for we could actually conduct testing in dental offices.
Y yo creo que el odontólogo está preparado inclusive para llevar a cabo estas pruebas en su consultorio.
And the reason for that being that the samples we are taking is down in the nasopharynx, an area that's very close to where we usually work. And one of the problems we have with testing right now is that people who do these swabs, who taken these samples, don't know how to do it properly enough.
Y pues nosotros estamos acostumbrados como odontólogos a trabajar en la boca y en las zonas que están siendo problemáticas, la boca, la faringe, y muchas de las personas que hoy están llevando a cabo estas pruebas no están suficientemente preparados para hacerlas porque no están acostumbrados a trabajar en la boca.
Yeah, and this is a big problem because today the false negative rate, meaning people are infected but the test comes back negative, is as high as 30%. Not because of the test, but because the test was not performed properly.
Y muchas, hasta un 30% no son creíbles porque no por la que la prueba no sirva, sino en la forma en la que se llevó a cabo. Give me one sec. I have a lot of people that I want to tell them how to go in through. Wow, we're really crowded. Hold on a sec. No, well, you can continue, but I'll try to do two things. But remember, I'm a man.
Go ahead. Tell me when you're ready. Just tell me when you're ready.
I write it one time and then I can just... Okay, now I can just share it. So go ahead, please.
Yeah. Another thing that we can do, and that I think we should do, is when vaccination becomes available, I think we should try to change whatever regulation there is in whatever country or jurisdictions you are, where dentists will be able to actually give these type of vaccinations.
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Bottom line is, when vaccines become available,
okay,
we have the facilities as well as the expertise how to actually give an injection for a vaccine. I mean, we do it all the time with antibiotics and other injections, obviously. So depending on the jurisdiction and the laws where you live and practice, I would urge us to try to impact so we can actually be part of the mass vaccination today and in the future.
Precisamente por la forma en que se practica la odontología, que estamos muy acostumbrados a hacer inyecciones, pues de acuerdo a la legislación local o de cada país, será importante que también se utilice al odontólogo una vez que exista una vacuna para poder él llevar a cabo las vacunaciones.
So let me change the topic a little bit and talk about dentistry specifically. So obviously, a lot of the procedures we do will generate aerosol.
Una de las cosas que nos complican a nosotros es el trabajar con aerosoles.
So there are two things here. One is, can we minimize aerosol?
Podemos minimizar el aerosol. You're talking about handpiece and...
Yeah. Can we minimize generating aerosol?
Sí, tenemos que minimizar, pensar en cómo vamos a minimizar los aerosoles que salen de la triple y de las piezas de mano.
So that's number one. And number two, can we, if we generate aerosol, can we actually have engineering or other types of mechanism where the spread of this aerosol is going to be minimized?
Y la otra será que será un reto minimizar o llevar al mínimo la cantidad de aerosol que generan estos instrumentos, la triple sobre todo y la pieza de mano.
So there are two issues here. One is the aerosol transmission from the patient to us.
Uno es la transmisión del virus del paciente hacia nosotros.
not the virus, the aerosol,
el aerosol,
which
no
are
el...
droplets with a virus, because that's very important because we have to differentiate between the droplets and the virus itself.
Sí, tenemos que hacer una diferencia entre cuando un paciente tose y la humedad que sale de su boca y si es un paciente infectado puede tener coronavirus. Yo estoy hablando ahora de los aerosoles que nosotros provocamos al utilizar piezas de mano y jeringas triples.
So for instance, can we generate more suction for the aerosol that we are generating in order to get less splashes onto us as healthcare professionals?
Un ejemplo sería mejorar la succión quirúrgica, que es capaz de llevarse sea capaz de llevarse todo ese aerosol que estamos generando para que no salga de la boca.
And the other thing, which I think is very controversial, is that today we have universal precautions,
Hoy tenemos precauciones universales,
but that's for blood-borne diseases.
pero no están hechas, más bien están hechas para enfermedades que se contagien vía sangre o bloodborne.
In order to get for airborne diseases, we may actually have to change even our environment in which we are working.
Y para enfermedades que se transmiten de esta forma, que son airborne o que vienen en el aire, seguramente vamos a tener que cambiar la forma en que trabajamos.
For example, many years ago when HIV and tuberculosis were discussed, at that time they were discussing on doing 2 measures in a dental office.
Hace muchos años cuando cuando se empezaron los problemas con el VIH y con la tuberculosis, se habló de introducir ciertas medidas en las clínicas y consultorios.
One was to have a negative pressure room,
Tener un cuarto de presión negativa.
and the other was to try to get 3 air room exchanges every hour.
Y la otra era que se cambiara el aire o se lavara el aire por lo menos 3 veces en una hora.
The problem is to be able to do that in a dental office today is going to cost a lot of money, a lot of money.
Pero introducir este tipo de sistemas en un consultorio dental puede ser carísimo.
But that's part of the engineering controls that maybe we'll see in the future for specific care or specific patient in specific institution for specific circumstances. So it might happen.
Así que probablemente en el futuro veamos instituciones que puedan tener este tipo de lavadores de aire para tratar pacientes especiales con casos especiales.
The other question is the type of care we are providing, and I mentioned a little bit about changing the type of care to less aerosolized type of care.
Y también utilizar tratamientos que utilicen y generen menos aerosoles.
But the other question is, do we now need to better identify individuals that might be immune suppressed, patients that are more susceptible to actually get infected with diseases such as these?
Y también llevar a cabo una especie de selección o tamizaje de aquellos pacientes que tienen un sistema inmune deprimido y que son están en más riesgo si se contagian.
So those are issues that we're talking about, how to practice dentistry. And I can go into details about more things and so on and so forth. But let me switch to another topic. And that is...
Cambiar a por un momento, otro tema.
And that is maybe now there's an opportunity to enhance teledentistry.
Y es un concepto que se podría llamar odontología de televisión.
So the question, not even with your iPhones or with a different type of technology, right? So do we have that?
Podría ser utilizando los teléfonos o otro tipo de... sorry, I've never had so many WhatsApps in my life together at the same time. I'm trying to answer all of them.
You need an assistant.
I'm just sending the link. Sorry.
So the question is, do we have the technology today to answer to a demand for teledentistry?
¿Tenemos en este momento la demanda o la tecnología para hacer teledentistry?
And can we assure the privacy with this type of technology for patients?
Y tampoco sabemos si podemos asegurar la privacidad con estas tecnologías para nuestros pacientes.
And another obvious issue is how do we bill for these type of procedures? Well, maybe we need to start billing differently in order to treat patients with teledentistry.
¿Y cómo vamos a cobrar, o si se va a poder cobrar bajo estos sistemas de odontología a distancia?
So many of the things I brought up today are things that we need to do today. But I think if we think about these, and there's a long list of other things, it would probably see how dentistry will change in the future for two reasons. Number one, we can practice dentistry better. And number two, we can learn from this pandemic to be better prepared for the next one.
Hay dos cosas que sí nos podemos preparar los dentistas. Una que seguramente tendrá un efecto casi inmediato, las cosas que preparemos hoy en cómo vamos a trabajar después. Y una es la forma en que trabajamos, seguramente va a cambiar sustancialmente. Y la otra es cómo adelantarnos para que una crisis de este tipo no nos vuelva a tomar desprevenidos.
So the way I'm looking at it, probably the most urgent question that dentists will have today is transmission, aerosolized transmission, and contagion. Is that correct?
Lo que tenemos ahora es transmisión vía aire con los aerosoles y que la infección vaya y venga.
So the question then is, if that's a concern, do we have the right masks, for instance?
Por ejemplo, una es si esa es nuestra preocupación principal, tenemos las barreras, mascarillas correctas.
Will in the future, for instance, will we only treat patients with N95 or FFP3 or P3s, different type of masks?
Y en el futuro nos obligue a tratar a cada paciente con estas mascarillas que realmente son una barrera y no permiten el intercambio de líquido aire.
Another thing I'm looking forward to is seeing more research on aerosol transmission. And the reason for that is that the technology and the information we have today is based on research done in the 1930s.
Y seguramente esto va a hacer que la odontología haga mucha más investigación, porque los estudios que existen con respecto a la infección o la creación de aerosoles viene de los años 30, casi 90 años tienen estas investigaciones y no hay más nuevas.
Yeah. And another thing is, can we identify individuals that are infectious?
La otra es, ¿podemos identificar a aquellos pacientes que están infectados?
And the answer is no, we cannot.
Y la pregunta es no, en este momento no podemos saber.
And the reason being that there are a lot of individuals that are infected and infectious before they develop signs and symptoms from 1 to 3 days. It could even be longer.
Y parte de esto es que un paciente que está infectado puede no tener síntomas hasta el tercero o quinto día y nosotros no lo sabemos. Michael, let me just ask you one thing in this subject. I think that the dentistry changed in the mid-80s with the first, what they used to call the zero patient on HVI. And that's when dentistry changed. We went to school, we didn't have to wear any gloves, we didn't have to wear any mask for daily procedures, just for surgicals, and the gloves were surgical.
Jaime, you're just telling everyone how old you are.
Yes, I said we, so I meant you and me. But no, what I say is dentistry is probably one of the best prepared professions because, you know, doctors don't have to buy an autoclave. They have it in the hospitals. They don't have to buy instruments. They have it in the hospitals. Don't have to use clean the chair between a patient and another because if they operate, those things are done by the hospitals. And dentistry is, I cannot find another profession that it's better prepared. But as you say, we were prepared for aerosol, for airborne. I mean, for bloodborne and not for airborne. Let me just translate. Le pregunto al doctor Glick que qué opina él. La odontología está preparada desde mediados de los años 80, cuando fue el paciente cero del VIH, y empezó a instituir todas estas normas, y probablemente el consultorio dental es el que mejor está preparado para este tipo de enfermedades que se contagiaran vía sangre. Desde los mediados de los 80 se utilizan barreras, se desinfectan. Muchos doctores no tienen la obligación de tener un autoclave en su consultorio. Los odontólogos sí tenemos esa normatividad. El desinfectar las superficies, el utilizar todas las barreras, se empezó a usar a mitad de los 80s. Cuando muchos que están seguramente escuchando esta plática fuimos a la universidad, se trabajaba sin guantes, sin cubrebocas, sin gorros, con una filipina, y muchas veces teníamos que ir a la escuela de corbata y la filipina cerraba más o menos hasta acá. Entonces, creo que la odontología en ese sentido está un paso adelante. I think, just to reconnect you, I think dentistry is one step ahead of the other profession in this case. Certainly they have to be rethink and reorganized for this airborne
Right, but Jaime, there are two things here. And what we are forgetting is that we do all this in our operatories. But if we're not talking about these type of airborne diseases, we need to change our waiting rooms also.
Yeah, well, taking the magazines were the first thing we did at the very beginning of the...
Right, but think about protecting your staff in the waiting rooms, as well as transmission between patients when we talk about airborne.
Sí, cuando la diferencia, dice Michael con mucha razón, es que ahora no nada más se trata de las medidas que vamos a tomar en los operatorios, ahora tenemos que estar desinfectando la sala de espera, a nuestro personal de la recepción y en general de todo el consultorio, y no nada más dentro de la zona del cubículo.
And I'll give you an example. There was one case here in the United States, up in Washington, where there were 60 people that came together in a choir to sing.
Hubo un caso en Washington State,
Yeah.
en el estado de Washington, Estados Unidos, donde 60 personas se juntaron para cantar, o sea, eran miembros de un coro.
They made sure they didn't shake hands, they didn't kiss, they didn't hug. The only thing they did was singing together for 2.5 hours.
No se dieron la mano, guardaron la sana distancia, no se saludaron de beso y solamente cantaron por 2 horas.
3 weeks later, 45 out of the 60 people were diagnosed with COVID, and 3 of them had been hospitalized and 2 of them were dead.
45 de estos miembros del coro se contagiaron, 3 están hospitalizados y 2 ya murieron. Probably the ones on the last line were the safest ones. Nobody sang behind them.
Yeah. I mean, so the transmission here of this deadly disease is something that we are discovering might be a little bit different than what we thought were about SARS and MERS, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. And I think we need to learn more before we decide how to change the way we practice. Because I from the beginning here, I never thought that you could actually get that disease in such an infectious dose by being together with someone and singing together in the same room, and suddenly you die. I never thought that was possible, and I'm changing my mind now.
Dice, yo no pensaba que por cantar durante 2 horas en un mismo salón la gente se podría contagiar y morir. Así que esto definitivamente va a causar o va a obligar a que cambiemos mucho todas nuestras actitudes con respecto a estas enfermedades que son mucho peores que el SARS o el MER que se presentaron en años anteriores.
Yeah, I still don't know how to treat the patients while I'm 2 meters away from the patient.
Ni siquiera sé cómo lo puedo tratar a 2 metros de distancia.
I don't have an answer for that one.
And you don't know if it's enough.
I think it's enough, but not in every single case. And that brings me to another issue.
Dice, no sé si se puede hacer, pero eso me trae a otro punto.
I don't think that comorbidity will change the rate of infection but comorbidity will definitely change the outcome of that infection.
Dice, la morbilidad no va a cambiar, pero sí va a cambiar la forma de tratamientos.
For instance, patients with cardiovascular disease, with diabetes, with hypertension, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and immune suppressions have a much, much dire prognosis than patients without those comorbidities.
Recuerden las enfermedades no comunicables que tienen, que son los que están en mayor riesgo si se infectan por el COVID, como el asma, problemas cardíacos, hipertensión, como problemas de diabetes. Esas personas van a ser más, o problemas con inmunodepresión, esas personas están más en riesgo que cualquier otro de poder fallecer si son infectados por este coronavirus.
So now, with all that put together, should a dentist or dental assistant or hygienist with these type of comorbidities treat these type of patients?
Y la pregunta es, ¿debemos los odontólogos o las higienistas o asistentes atender así nada más a este tipo de pacientes que están tan en riesgo de morir?
Or shall we have clinics where we have dental personnel that's been infected and then recovered who are now immune?
O tal vez una solución sería que hubiera clínicas donde dentistas y higienistas que ya tuvieron la enfermedad, pero que ahora han adquirido cierta inmunidad, podrían atender a los pacientes que tienen estas situaciones de salud, diabetes, cardiovasculares, cardiopulmonares, de alta presión, etc.
So from the SARS epidemic, we know that protective antibodies peak after around 3 months.
Del SARS sabemos que los anticuerpos están en la parte más alta de la curva a los 3 meses.
And then they wane, they decrease over the next 3 years afterwards.
Y luego disminuyen 3 años después.
Which means at least with SARS, it didn't give you lifetime protection.
Eso quiere decir que con el SARS no se obtenía una protección para toda la vida, únicamente iba de los 3 meses el pico y después iba bajando hasta desaparecer los anticuerpos en 3 años.
So I think these are things that we need to address. We need to put them into different type of protocols, and maybe not now, but definitely we need these type of protocols in place for the next pandemic.
Y tal vez para esta no sea posible hacerlo, pero debemos de aprender de lo que está sucediendo en este momento para no repetir y estar listos si es que viniera otra pandemia similar.
So if you look here, this epidemic started 2019, MERS was 2012, SARS was 2003. So it seems like it'd be almost like a 10-year different type of time frame from these type of coronaviruses, at least.
Sí, sorry, I missed you. Bombarded from...
Yeah, I think it seems to be like almost like a 10-year time period between this different type of coronavirus pandemics.
Recuerden que hay más o menos cada 10 años, hace 10 años fue el H1N1, N1H1, anteriormente fue el SARS, entonces pareciera que la naturaleza tiene una forma de hacer este ciclo que regresa cada 10 años. Entonces no dejemos esta vez pasar la forma en que nos debemos de preparar y protegernos.
And for as long as the opportunity for these zoonotic viruses, meaning viruses in the animal kingdom to infect humans, and opportunities are in these open air markets where wild animals come together that usually don't come together in nature, and where the viruses get resorted and become infectious for humans. And this is where all of these viruses have come from. So for as long as those opportunities still exist, we can anticipate pandemics.
Bueno, por ejemplo, sabemos que si nos vamos a lo que podría ser la parte de ciencia que explique esto, estos brotes han sido en países o en regiones donde en los mercados conviven diferentes animales que normalmente en la vida diaria no están juntos, como puede ser los murciélagos, el puerco y otros animales que coinciden en los mercados y que pueden pasar la transmisión de uno a otro creando este nuevo virus que sí puede llegar a infectar a los humanos, y es por eso que se presenta en estas zonas, pues con por lo menos en los últimos años, con una periodicidad que ha venido de aproximadamente ciclos de 10 años.
All right. If you want to open it up for questions, I'll be happy to try to answer things to get into more specifics if people wants to hear.
Well, I read the first one is from Panama, Rodolfo Epifanio. Greetings from Panama, thinking about the risk of treating patients on a regular basis without knowing who is infected and contagious or not. So does it seem likely that it will be necessary to replace PPE for every patient? Nos saludan desde Panamá y nos preguntan si el riesgo, pensando en el riesgo que supone tratar a pacientes que no sabemos si están infectados o no, ¿será posible que tendremos que cambiarnos toda nuestra indumentaria de barreras para cada paciente?
I can only talk about the infection control guidelines from the United States.
Voy a hablarles de las controles o las guías de control de infecciones de los Estados Unidos.
And today, even before this pandemic, we did change our PPE between every patient.
Y en los Estados Unidos, por ley, hay que cambiarse las barreras de protección ya previo al coronavirus entre paciente y paciente.
We know about how long time this virus can actually survive. We know that this virus can survive up to around 72 hours after being placed on stainless steel and plastic, 4 hours after being placed on copper, 24 hours after being put on cardboard. So the chance of this virus surviving outside the mouth for a long period of time exists.
Otra cosa que caracteriza a este virus es, a diferencia del de hace 10 años, que solo vivía mientras durara la gota en la que la persona tosía, y al tocar alguna superficie desaparecía, y este nuevo virus no desaparece, tiene un diferente vida de acuerdo a dónde está. En cartón puede ser hasta 24 horas, en metal puede ser hasta 4 horas, algunos hablan que en ciertos metales hasta una semana. En fin, la rapidez con la que esto ha evolucionado no nos ha permitido realmente tener por lo menos esos datos bajo control. Michael, I think that the speed at which this pandemic has gone, it seems like a year, it's only been a month, but it hasn't allowed us to really know the enemy. Some people talk about different lengths of survival of the virus in different surfaces, but we cannot know. We really don't know if the temperature affects it or not. There is not enough research, no?
Correct. And let me go back to that initial question. We know that the virus can survive outside the body for a long period of time, but we don't know if it's still infectious and can still infect. So we sort of extrapolate from, yes, it can survive for such a long time, and then we make the conclusion, well, in that case, we can get infected. We haven't done that step yet.
Yeah. Sí, precisamente como no ha habido tiempo de hacer investigación, sabemos que el virus sobrevive en esas superficies, pero no sabemos si necesariamente al tocarlo lo llevamos en nuestra mano. There is another interesting question. It says, hola, mil gracias por la charla. ¿Qué tipo de enjuague para bajar la carga antimicrobiana y viral de la saliva se le podría dar a los pacientes antes del tratamiento odontológico? Gracias. It's a question that says, thank you very much for the session. Is there some rinse that we can lower the microbial and viral content in saliva that we could ask our patients to rinse before any dental treatment?
There are three rinses that are being used right now. One is chlorhexidine. The problem with chlorhexidine has only been tested against bacteria and not against viruses. So,
una sería la clorhexidina, que es muy común para enfermedad periodontal, que ya se vende en muchas partes del mundo, y que sabemos que baja la cantidad de microbios en la boca, pero no se ha probado contra el coronavirus.
The other one that's being used is 1 to 1.5% of hydrogen peroxide mouth rinses.
Enjuagues de agua oxigenada al 1 and 1.5.
Yeah, Colgate has a mouth rinse called Peroxil that has 1.5% hydrogen peroxide, and also mouth rinse with 1% hydrogen peroxide.
Hay algunos, como el de Colgate, de 1.5, el Peroxil de agua oxigenada al 1.5, hay otros en el mercado a 1%. But they have not been tested either.
They have been tested, but not against this virus.
Okay. Sí han sido probados, pero no contra este virus.
And the last one is an article that is forthcoming, probably in the Lancet. It's a group of British researchers that have shown that a 0.23 to 0.5% povidone iodine mouth rinse, at least in vitro, can kill the virus.
Again,
0.23 up to 0.5% of povidone iodine could possibly...
0.2.3 a 0.5 de yodo. What kind of iodine is that?
Povidone iodine solution. So povidone iodine solution.
Providón de yodo sí ha sido probado y puede destruir los virus.
Yeah.
How about tequila, Michael?
Sorry?
How about tequila?
Oh, tequila, absolutely. But you have to give it...
It would have to be 70%, not even Aquavit has that.
Yeah, but it has to be given to the dentist, not to the patient.
Bueno, lo bromeaba yo al doctor Glick, que qué tal el tequila. Dice que sí, eso seguramente serviría mucho, pero habría que dárselo al dentista y no se ha probado en pacientes. Now, you talk about, for example, fluoridiamine as do you think for the future, we've talked a lot of what happened now and that we have to really learn you know, I get disconnected very easy from my thoughts because I get the questions. Somebody is saying it's called in Spanish yodo povidona o isodine. Bueno, en México es la marca Isodine. Yes, so that's in the market. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think many years ago that was used for vaginal douches. Many years back.
That might be your specialty, it's not mine.
No. Le digo que el Isodine, si no mal recuerdo, se ha utilizado en México o en algunas partes de Latinoamérica como para duchas vaginales. So besides getting ready for the next, you have more ideas on what can be the future? Además de prepararnos para la siguiente etapa, ¿hay alguna otra idea como la de cambiar los protocolos de atención? Por ejemplo, en caso de niños con fluoruro de diamina de plata. What do you think about the change of not of tools, not of hardware, but a change in the way dentistry is practiced?
Be more specific. I agree with you, but try to be more specific because I agree with you.
No. I mean, for example, that no more cavities will be drilled in children, at least in posterior teeth, since silver diamine fluoride be used to at least stop the caries, stop the disease. Of course, the hole is still there and now it's black, but it has the property of not letting more, it's like a tattoo for the tooth. So the silver doesn't allow the bugs to reorganize in those cavities. Do you see a lot of that coming our way?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I meant with that we are going to start to see dentistry being practiced with minimal aerosol generating procedures. When there is a non-aerosol generating procedures available, that will be chosen over the aerosol one. And I definitely see how that's going to change dramatically.
Yo sí pienso que eso va a cambiar dramáticamente. And that's good for amalgam lovers because you can use the diamine and still have some silver there and not the burdens of mercury. There's another question, Michael. Are the way we sterilize instruments, is it going to stay the same?
Yes.
Or is it going to change?
No, I think it's going to stay the same. And what we know about this virus so far is that the sterilization procedures we're using is okay. And the disinfectant that we're using is okay also. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, in the United States has something called an N list, like the letter N list, where they actually have a long list of different type of disinfectants that you can use for COVID-19, for SARS-CoV-2. CDC also has a link to this list. So it's going to be this disinfectant and not sterilization that's going to be the issue.
Yeah. Well, me dice que sí, definitivamente esto, ya hay una lista aprobada de algunas sustancias que sí han resultado positivas en matar el virus. Have you heard of these sort of artificial tunnels that they're putting in some hospitals or clinics before the people go in to disinfect their clothing or their hair? Could we see something like that? Is a question. Could we see something like that in our dental office in the future?
It's very possible. They're using now in the United States in emergency rooms with ultraviolet light and all the other type of procedures. If it's working or not, we don't know yet. We presume it is because it's a biological plausible it will be that it's working. But it's very possible that these are type of things that are going to be tested in the future and then integrated as a airborne protection.
Sí. Le preguntaba yo al doctor Glick si ha visto esos túneles pequeños que al atravesar las personas es como un spray que los desinfecta, que se utilizan a la entrada de muchos hospitales, de algunos edificios de gobierno en varios países que siguen operando, pues los países no pueden parar al 100. Hablo por México, los recogedores de basura, los que barren las calles, los que atienden las emergencias de luz o de agua. Y dice que sí, que eventualmente podremos verlo. Se utilizan en muchos lados. Lo que nadie ha podido es hacer la investigación adecuada para ver la efectividad de esos rocíos de desinfectante. Sorry, Spanish is more florid than English. It took me longer to translate your idea. Any other ideas? ¿Alguna otra idea? Michael, any other idea?
Oh, I have plenty of other ideas, but I'd rather start to answer questions than anything else, because I think, again, don't forget, I mean, what I believe that our biggest impact right now in this epidemic is for us as healthcare professionals to give our patients and other people the right information. So the more we know about this, the better it is. And I'll be very happy to provide any and all information. As you know, I have a video up on YouTube where I address a lot of this different information. And it's a video that's updated on a regular basis. that's the type of information I think that we need to have available to us. But the problem is also the information and data is coming to us in such a rapid progression right now. You have one article on COVID published, at least one article every 45 to 50 minutes.
Dice, la cantidad de información es enorme. Se están publicando artículos sobre COVID aproximadamente a una velocidad de casi uno cada 45 minutos, o sea, menos de una hora que se publican. Hay mucho que tenemos que aprender, pero lo que mejor podemos hacer es informarnos. Nosotros pondremos también en la página de IDE Academia y en la personal un video de YouTube que ha preparado el doctor Glick y que se ha estado cambiando conforme esto va cambiando, porque la información cambia en una forma rapidísima. Lo mejor que podemos hacer para nuestros pacientes es informarnos nosotros y digerir esta información e irla pasando a ellos. Creo que es una labor que podemos hacer muy bien. There is a question from Argentina.
Let me just add something to that. So because there's such a rapid availability of all these articles, they're not peer-reviewed. There's no way that they have been scientifically validated. So therefore, a lot of these articles that are coming out in different places have information that's not scientifically robust and valid. And
Quiero hacer la aclaración de que a la velocidad a la que han aparecido estos artículos y no han sido realmente científicamente comprobados, muchos son revisiones de literatura que no han sufrido una revisión, y por eso tenemos que tener cuidado y saber discernir entre los artículos que sí vienen de instituciones donde tradicionalmente se hacen evaluaciones y artículos serios. You know, it's like you have to be sure the source before you start disseminating information, right?
Yes,
Even certain institutions have the...
Yeah, you have to listen to the expert and not all the time to Dr. Trump.
Sí, que deben de escuchar a los expertos y no escuchar de Dr. Trump o en nuestro caso de Dr. López Obrador. Ahora, there is a question from a good friend from Argentina, Eduardo Secotti. Saludos, Eduardo. Leo tu pregunta. ¿Cuál es la expectativa sobre las drogas en investigación? What's your point of view or your expectation on the drugs that are being tested as not as a vaccine, as a treatment?
Yeah, great question. So I believe actually that the medications that are going to work the best are, interesting enough, some of the medication we use today for HIV disease. And there are two reasons for that. There have been some initial reports that in China, where COVID patients and HIV patients actually were in the same area, the HIV patients on these medications didn't get infected. That's one.
Cross-infected, you mean? Or...
There was no cross-infection. Other people got affected, but people who were on antiretroviral therapy did not get COVID.
Let me explain this. Hay algunos estudios que demuestran que, primero agradezco la gran pregunta del doctor Secotti, y existen ya estudios donde en China la gente que ya recibía retrovirales para el VIH no se infectaron de coronavirus, pero es algo que todavía requiere de mayor profundidad en su investigación. It's the combination of different retrovirals, right?
It's a combination as well, specific antiretrovirals, and some of them are now being tested in mega trials. It's a trial called Solidarity that the World Health Organization is organizing all over the world. And one of those, two of those medications are HIV medications with and without alpha interferon. And the reason they're using these medications is that HIV is an RNA virus, and this virus is also an RNA virus. So we are testing now a lot of medication that works against these envelope RNA viruses that are very similar. and I think we're probably going to get some very good results.
Muchas personas en varias partes del mundo han estado investigando la posibilidad de utilizar una combinación de estos retrovirales, algunos con alfa interferón y unos sin, basados en esta información que nos indicó que muchas personas que utilizaban ya esto para contener el VIH no se infectaron, tomando en cuenta que tanto el virus, el VIH y el coronavirus son virus a base de ácido ribonucleico o ARN.
Another thing we're going to see more antibody type of medications, meaning taking blood from convalescent from patients that have recovered from COVID, take the blood, separate the antibodies, study those antibodies, figure out what in those antibodies worked, and then either using those antibodies or replication of those antibodies in order to do make medications that then will prevent infection with COVID-19, with SARS-CoV-2. I think that is probably one of the most promising technologies out there today as well.
There are a couple of questions that come in the same token, which is, what do you think of the use of ventilators, not ventilators for intubated people, ventilators and air conditioning in the offices? Is it wise to stop them?
I have not seen anything that would say you should stop them.
No veo ninguna necesidad de no utilizar ni ventiladores ni aires acondicionados en la clínica en este momento, así lo veo yo. Bueno, Michael.
Yeah, my question is also, are those air conditioning, this type of units that actually do air exchanges, meaning they take the hot air and throw them out? And if that's the case, that probably will be very beneficial.
Unless you're outside. No, dice Michael que existen algunos aires acondicionados que lavan el aire, o sea, avientan aire frío y sacan el aire hacia afuera. Le digo yo que eso es muy bueno para los que están adentro, no para los que están afuera. Pero eso sí podría ser, de hecho es una de las opciones, ¿no? Estos cuartos que estén cambiando el aire hasta 3 veces en una hora. That's the principle you said a while ago, a few minutes ago, about these air cleaners that should clean the whole air of the operatory or of the office at least 3 times in 1 hour, which would be very, very expensive for offices to carry such things.
And again, these are theories. These are theories that need to be tested. But I think there are going to be a lot of entrepreneurs out there that will try to sell you all of these devices, and they may work.
Okay. Have you heard something about using those decompression chambers?
No.
You know, that puts the oxygen through the cells without the need of vascularity?
I've not heard about that.
No.
Don't
Okay,
know.
another question. Maybe it would be useful to use handpieces that instead of water should use some kind of disinfectant. Well, that's if you have good isolation in the mouth.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the whole thing will spray back to the throat, ¿no? Hay una pregunta que dice que si sería posible que en el futuro hubiera piezas de mano que en vez de utilizar agua utilizaran una sustancia desinfectante. Y yo agregué que pues sería importante que hubiera un buen aislamiento con dique de hule y podría ser una posibilidad, pero no cuando se están trabajando sin dique de hule en algunas situaciones de prótesis fija que no permite necesariamente el aislamiento. My best wishes from Costa Rica, from Rafael. Rafael, saludos, gracias. Somebody is suggesting like the material that the aligners are made to use those masks, but you know the problem is how you breathe. If you have something solid, yes, it will avoid anything that comes out of the patient mouth, but you will be blue in a couple minutes, no? What do you think are going to be the repercussions in the medical side, legal and psychological, in the attention of patients? I have this question for the panic that many people have demonstrated. Lo voy a leer en español. ¿Qué opina usted sobre las repercusiones en el ámbito médico, legal y psicológico en la atención de los pacientes? Me surge esta pregunta por el pánico que muchas personas han demostrado.
Are you talking about healthcare professionals that refuse to treat these patients?
Well, I think the question is very, very wide. It covers a lot of areas, but one is rejection of treatment. Can be that an issue in the next future when the dentistry starts to get on our, no, I don't want to say on our feet because we haven't fell down, but it's really one of the key professions that will have to deal with patients' mouth and breath. And
so it's the same issue that came up with during HIV, right? At that time, there were a lot of dentists that refused to treat patients with HIV, and they referred them to dental schools or to special clinics and so on and so forth. And then governments and jurisdictions started to make regulation, then laws. So in the United States, as an example, anyone with an infectious disease, and they started with tuberculosis, and then HIV was included, cannot be denied treatment based on their infectious status. And that will apply to COVID-19 as well in the United States. So again, there's going to be different places, different jurisdictions that are going to have different rules. But from an ethical and moral standpoint, I think it would be very bad for us as a profession if we started to refuse to treat patients that are in need of our care.
Ustedes recordarán que en un inicio, cuando salió a la luz y se supo del VIH, muchos dentistas en los Estados Unidos se negaban a atender personas que fueran VIH positivos, y poco a poco fue cambiando la legislatura en este sentido. Y pues no, desconozco, el mundo es muy grande, aunque a veces parece pequeño, y hay legislaciones que no nos permiten negarle el tratamiento a nadie, o pasaremos por una etapa de transición, pero desde el punto de vista ético y moral, creo que la odontología no puede caer en este juego de no dejar de atender pacientes porque no estamos suficientemente preparados o por el miedo que nosotros mismos podamos tener. There are a lot of questions, Michael. Do you mind if we keep going?
No, go right ahead. I see one here about chloroquine. Do you want me to address that one, hydroxychloroquine?
Sure.
Okay, so...
Just read it in Spanish.
Yeah.
He oído a algunos colegas hablar de la posibilidad de tener medicamentos profilácticos como la hidroxicloroquinina o antivirales, por ejemplo, para profesionales de la salud bucal. ¿Podrían darlo a los pacientes en lo que no existe una vacuna? Go ahead.
So this is an example of an article that was published, picked up by media, not by scientists, and then promoted as an effective treatment against COVID, meaning hydroxychloroquine or hydroxychloroquine together with azithromycin. So let me just go into some details why this publication should never have been published.
Hay un artículo que se publicó sobre ciertos casos de éxito tratando a los pacientes de coronavirus con una mezcla de hidroxicloroquinina y acitromicina. Ese artículo nunca debió de haberse publicado.
So there are many reasons. One is this publication was submitted for publication on March 16th and accepted 24 hours later.
Fue sometida para su revisión el 13 de marzo y se aprobó 24 horas después.
And it was accepted within 24 hours in a journal where the first author is the editor-in-chief.
Y fue publicada en una revista donde el autor del artículo es el editor en jefe de esa revista.
The article was about a 14-day trial of chloroquine.
Era sobre un tratamiento de un protocolo de 14 días de cloroquinina.
And they got the ethical approval to conduct the trial on March 5th.
Y consiguieron el permiso para hacer esa prueba el 5 de marzo.
And it was a 14-day trial, but they submitted the article on March 16th, meaning
Pero-
11 days later.
A pesar de que el protocolo era de 14 días, se entregó 11 días después para su publicación.
It was not randomized.
No fue, la muestra no fue random, al azar,
Which means, for instance, they had many, many more young people in the control group. And these young people, as you know, have a much less affinity to develop severe disease.
Por ejemplo, la mayoría de los pacientes tratados fueron jóvenes que en su mayoría ni presentan síntomas y se curan pronto de la enfermedad. No se escogió diferentes grupos de edades correctamente.
The same PCR test that was done on the patient that finalized the trials were not the same test as they did on all the control patients.
Y los datos utilizados en las personas tratadas no fueron iguales que en las personas de control.
Out of the 42 patients they enlisted, 16 were in control group, 26 in the active treatment group.
De los 42 pacientes, 26 estaban en el grupo y 16 eran de control.
Of the 26 that started with the treatment, only 20 finished the trial.
De los 26, solamente 20 terminaron el tratamiento.
Those 6 that didn't, one died,
De los
someone
que no terminaron, uno fue porque se murió,
some went into intensive care,
uno estaba en terapia intensiva,
some couldn't finish the medication because of side effects,
muchos no pudieron terminar el tratamiento por los efectos secundarios,
and others left the hospital and they don't know what happened to them.
otros salieron del hospital y ya no hubo un seguimiento de qué les pasó.
And the result was only based on the remaining 20 patients that were only followed for 6 days.
Y el resto habla de 20 pacientes que solo fueron seguidos durante 6 días.
If you had included all the 26, you would show that this medication had a higher death rate than COVID.
Si hubieran incluido a los 26 pacientes, tendrían una mortalidad mayor que el COVID solo.
So I'm not saying this is not going to work. What I'm
Yo quiero
saying
decir
is
que esto no va a funcionar.
that what happened was so someone picked this up, Trump promoted it, and then
Alguien
suddenly,
encontró esto, el presidente Trump lo promovió,
people who really needed it, lupus patients, rheumatoid arthritis patients, and so on and so forth, had not enough medication for
y
this to use.
se agotó el medicamento y las personas que realmente lo utilizan por lupus o por artritis reumatoide, pues ahora no pueden tener acceso al medicamento, está agotado por las compras de pánico.
And one more thing from a medical standpoint,
Desde el punto de vista médico,
10% of individuals have a type of susceptibility to cardiac condition called a long QT interval.
el 10% tuvieron, 10% had,
They have a medical condition
era
that
una
affects
condición
their
médica
heart,
en su corazón,
that if you take this medication, you can actually induce sudden death.
que tener una condición cardíaca que el simple hecho de tomar la medicina podía matarlos.
And if you add azithromycin to it, you increase the chances even greater.
Y si le sumabas acitromicina, la posibilidad de que fallecieran era todavía mayor.
So would I recommend anyone and everyone taking hydroxychloroquine? No, but I would
¿Recomiendo a
not,
todo el mundo que utilice hidroxicloroquinina? No.
Disregard that it might be possible it is helpful if used appropriately.
Pero no tengo duda que probablemente podría servir si se utiliza adecuadamente.
I hope that answered that question.
Okay, I've heard some colleagues talking about the possibility of having prophylactic medications.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, let me see on this side. Les escribo, me están pasando de la producción, un saludo, están muy calladitas hoy. Nos escribo desde San Carlos, Costa Rica, trabajo en un lugar de muy alta temperatura y altísima humedad. Ahora no estoy trabajando por razones obvias, pero cuando se retome nuestra práctica no imagino cómo será no usar aire acondicionado. Entonces, ¿cuán beneficioso sería abrir para lograr ventilación natural cada 30 minutos y así circulen las partículas o gotículas que estén suspendidas, sea que se alejen o caigan al piso y en el suelo, y poderlas así desinfectar? It's somebody that is writing in Facebook Live from Costa Rica, and he says, I work in a place that it's very high temperature and very high humidity. I'm not working right now, but when I retake my practice, I imagine that it's going to be impossible not to use air conditioning. So would it be beneficial to open windows and have the natural ventilation from outside every 30 minutes? And so the particles will circulate, go to the floor. And now actually, many people, I'll make a second question on the same question.
The weather.
No, many people think that the virus is floating in the air. So is it? O sea,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
¿el virus puede estar así flotando en el aire, nada más porque sí?
So the size of this virus is around 0.05 to 0.2 micron.
El tamaño de este virus es de 0.05 a 0.02 micrones.
And that type of size of a virus can stay airborne for many hours.
Y puede estar en el aire por muchas horas.
However, if the virus is inside droplets,
sin embargo, si está dentro de gotas
that are more than 5 micron, and that's usually what they are, in that case, it will fall down pretty quickly from that meter height.
Por simple física y por su peso, esas gotas no se quedan suspendidas en el aire. But I've heard many people saying, don't worry, COVID doesn't have wings and cannot swim. So you think it can be suspended? Is it cities with more pollution more prone to have viruses suspended in these particles in the air?
Again, as I said, the virus can be suspended. We've done it in laboratories. But,
o sea, el virus sí puede estar suspendido en el aire por poco tiempo si está solo, if it's alone. But if in a droplet, because somebody spit or somebody cough, or sneeze, it will go right down to the floor or the surface next to it.
Yeah, but this goes back to what I mentioned before about research done, in the 1930s. It was an article published on March 26 in the Journal of American Medical Association that showed very clearly that if you sneeze, that aerosol is between 7 and 8 meters away from the person that sneezes.
Bueno, hay un estudio en la Academia Americana de Medicina que ha demostrado que cuando una persona estornuda, con la fuerza del estornudo, puede alcanzar esas gotas 6 o 7 metros. But since they're droplets, they cannot stay in the air. They would go to the floor or the next surface. Can be a chair, can be a table, can be your desk.
Are you talking about 7 to 8 meters?
What's your opinion on wearing masks like they did in Korea, regardless of, I'll tell you the Mexican exercise. People don't, they're advocating not to use it if you don't have any symptoms, which we know is crazy because people can have no symptoms and but it was more related to that masks cannot be found, but at least cover your mouth and your nose when you go out. Would it be?
So again, in the United States today, they recommend that you go outside with some kind of mouth covering, either a real mask, or could be some kind of cloth, like a towel or a t-shirt, or some kind of bandana like this one. The protection here is not that you are protected, but the protection is that if you're infected, you cannot infect someone else. And that's probably where it's working. That's the direction, most probably where it's working and mitigating that more people getting infected.
we have to get the choir again with masks and see if they. Do you think there will be volunteers for another choir? No,
Yeah.
dice Michael que pues sí, el hecho de cubrirnos la boca es para que nosotros no infectemos a otras personas al estornudar, claro, precisamente porque el estornudo viene como un aerosol con mucha fuerza y es más para no contaminar a otros que para no contaminarnos nosotros. Pero para eso, como decimos en México, está su sana distancia. Voy a leer ya. I'm going to read you the last question because I think many people it's lunchtime or, you know, we have visits from all over the world, Michael. You have fans all over the place. I think it's an important question. What time after phase 3 do you think we can go back to work in our practices? That's the, you know, do you have a crystal ball or something? Leo ya la última pregunta. Mucha gente ya está en sus horarios de comida y creo que ya es hora de que cortemos aquí esta charla. Dice, ¿qué tiempo después de pasada la epidemia podemos volver a trabajar en nuestras consultas?
As I mentioned before, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. But I think it depends on the exponential growth of the pandemic in the specific area where you practice. Number one.
Depende de las condiciones de la pandemia en cada lugar.
Second, I think, and I have not heard this discussed, but I think it should also depend on the level of immunity in the population, meaning have enough people been infected and are now protected or cannot develop the disease that I feel safe being able to treat patients again the way I did it before. So I think there are two things that need to be weighed one against another. Can I tell you when? As I mentioned earlier, Norway, they're going back on already April 20th. The American Dental Association said, no, we cannot go back at least until April 30th. But I think it depends on really where you live and where you practice in the world.
Simplemente puedo resumir que esto dependerá mucho de dónde vives, del número de casos positivos, del número de casos fatales. Y en esa medida podrá cada país tomar las medidas. I have a very, very, very last questions. There is in Mexico a sense that the government is withholding information because only 27,000 have been tested, and they're not allowing any type of fast test. They're not allowing any test that it's not a PCR, but you know the tamisage or the way they're deciding is when somebody comes to one of the hospitals that have been assigned for this, if they don't have a fever, if they just have symptoms of influenza, most of them are sent home. When some people have gone through the disease with a very low temperature, not really high temperature. And they're not allowing the private sector to bring in. They said they remove all the necessary tests. So, but if you want to bring them, the customs would not allow it into the country. So there is a sense in Mexico that the government doesn't want you to go crazy by showing the right numbers. And you say, well, one day the death will be over the tested. And then what happens is that a lot of the deaths have been, since there is no test, they call them atypical pneumonia. So the public is demanding from the government to give a list of all the real deaths by atypical pneumonia, which is what the institutes of health are doing. What's your opinion on fast tests? And is it at least good to do the first search into? I know you said that many offices should be prepared to do these tests, and it will be great. They're not absolute, no, because somebody can be in the first day, in the second day, or you do the test and then they find somebody. The next time they come in, they may be positive. But I think it's at least a filter. I'll repeat it in Spanish. En México hay mucha preocupación de que el gobierno esconde los datos duros, se han realizado menos de 30,000 pruebas en todo el país y por eso hay casos sospechosos, pero cuando uno llega a un instituto que ya ha sido declarado que puede hacer las pruebas, el tamizaje consiste en tomarles la temperatura, en hacerles unas preguntas, y muchos son regresados porque le dicen, bueno, tienes influenza, a veces con una receta de Tamiflu, sin hacer la prueba del Tamiflu tampoco, porque es el mismo sistema PCR para detectar una o la otra. Hay pruebas que toman 2 y 3 días y hay muchos casos que se reportan donde la prueba de positivo les llegó cuando ya se habían muerto las personas. Entonces, ¿qué opina Michael de las pruebas rápidas? Y como él decía, que el mismo dentista sea el que las lleve a cabo eventualmente en su consultorio. Michael?
Well, I think you're 100% right. If you don't test, you don't know who is infected, right? So you have countries with very, very low infection rate. It's possible, but you definitely have the countries with very, 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 very low testing rates. And that goes back to one central problem with this epidemic or pandemic right now. I don't know, and I've been trying to find out, how do you confirm a COVID positive patient, meaning a confirmation? Is it enough to have signs and symptoms? Do you have to have signs and symptoms together with a viral test that's positive? Because you can have a viral test without being infected. It's just happened, the virus is there, and then the next day you spit it out or something. Doesn't mean it got into your lungs, right? So what is the definition of a COVID case? And I don't think anyone has come up with that yet. Most probably will be that you need to actually do a test of the virus presence in the lungs, not in the nasopharynx, but in the lungs, together with signs and symptoms. That's when you can start to talk about confirmatory tests, as well as get the case fatality rate and all those type of things everyone are talking about today. We cannot do that yet. I think it's advantageous for governments to downplay their role here, but I think it's going to come back and bite them, because if they downplay it and patients or individuals believe the risk is very low, what we have seen in those countries is that then it will start to go sky high. We saw it in the United States. In the United States, you know, there was a test available from Germany already on January 17th. A week later, WHO offered 250,000 tests to anyone who wanted it. In the US, they said, no, we're not going to take this test. We have our Center for Disease Control Prevention, and we'll do much better test. It took until January 20th for CDC actually to develop the test. It turns out the test wasn't good enough. So it took another week before we started testing. At the meantime, our government said, look, we don't have any cases. We have nothing because, you know, everyone is healthy. Well, they didn't have the testing. And look what's happening. Today, I mean, we have more cases in this country than any other country in the world. We have more cases in the state of New York today than any other country in the world. And part of that is, I believe, is the lack of instituting testing very, very early on, isolating patients, and take the right precautions such as social distancing. If we have done that, and look at South Korea as an example, they did it right. Could have been done earlier? Yes. But if I look at any country that did it correctly, South Korea, I think, is the case we have to look at. They did it very, very well. If Mexico is now even further behind than that, I would think that you're going to see a dramatic increase. Even if the government call it atypical pneumonia, you're still going to see a very, very rapid increase.
Well, it's known the fact that some doctors got orders on how to do the death certificate. So I'm going to translate what you said. Vean lo que pasó en Estados Unidos por no haber probado suficientemente fuerte. El Centro de Control de Enfermedades, o CDC, que está en Atlanta, desarrolló la prueba que no era buena al principio y se tardaron mucho en empezar a probar. Empezaron a recibir de Corea del Sur y de otros lugares las pruebas rápidas y las aprobaron. Y el tiempo que se perdió fue enorme y eso hizo que la gente no pensara que esto era tan importante. obviamente el que no es probado no es, pero eventualmente esto caerá como un boomerang sobre esos gobiernos cuando empiecen a morir más personas, porque los números dan la impresión de que estamos 2 semanas antes de lo que deberíamos, cuando en realidad no, porque en un país de 130 millones de habitantes no podemos creer que solamente se hayan hecho 30,000 pruebas, y sí se debe a lo complicado, a los aparatos para poderlas llevar a cabo, pero es precisamente por eso que las pruebas rápidas deberían ser aprobadas como una medida de tamizaje. Nadie está hablando que sea la medida definitiva, pero hoy el tamizaje en México desafortunadamente se hace con un termómetro. Michael, I want to thank you. There's a lot of compliments through the questions and through Facebook. Thank you very much. I think we might do this in the future, depends on how long we have to stay home. And we'll give you a reason to, to come back. Quiero agradecer al Dr. Michael Glick por habernos acompañado. Hay muchas felicitaciones para él en las preguntas, tanto en el Facebook como en el chat de aquí. Y quiero avisarles que la próxima semana, en 2 semanas, el día 15, tendremos de invitado al doctor Gerhard Sieberger, presidente de la Federación Dental Internacional, que ya ha aceptado estar con nosotros. For all English-speaking people, I want to thank you for being today, or those who didn't understand Spanish but do understand English. In 2 weeks' time, it's on Wednesday the 15th, we're going to have as a guest Dr. Gerhard Sieberger. He has accepted to be with us in a chat. It's a very informal, you know, I finished my coffee. And it's a way to be together and to send the right message to dentistry, that if there was a time where dentistry had to stay together and strong, this is the time. And we still don't have confirmed the guest for next week, but I'll let you know through the normal channels. And thank you all very much.
So Jaime, let me thank you very much for inviting me to come and do this presentation or this chat with you. I appreciate it very much, even though now you owe me more than 1 tequila, there's no question about it. But on a serious note, just one big caveat. Today is April 8th. The information we have today may change very quickly. So whatever information and data I gave you today, I cannot guarantee that's going to be valid 2 weeks from now. Things are changing very, very rapidly right now. So I hope I gave you the up-to-date, available type of information on today, but don't come back in 6 months and say, hey, look, things are different. Things will be different. There's no question about it. So again, thank you very much, and thank you all of you who participated in this whole thing. It's been a great experience, and thank you for all the wonderful questions. It was very nice.
El doctor Glick les quiere agradecer por, nos agradece por haberlo invitado esta charla, y nos recuerda que esto está cambiando cada hora, cada día, y que la información que hemos compartido hoy, tal vez existan cosas nuevas, y bueno, agradece esta forma de comunicación. Thank you, Michael. I think that when we have more information, we'll do an update. We're going to share your latest YouTube video. We wanted to put subtitles in Spanish. That version is going to take a little longer, but we'll certainly be happy to have dentists listen to you in a closed presentation. And a todos, muchas gracias. Muy buenas tardes. Estas pláticas se llaman Miércoles en Casa. The name of these lectures is Wednesday at Home, which is every day is today. Every day is a Sunday. So thank you very much. Goodbye from Mexico City.
Gracias. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hasta luego.
A nombre de IDE Academia les damos las gracias por habernos acompañado. Muchas gracias al doctor Michael Glick y también, por supuesto, al doctor Jaime Edelson. Les recordamos que podrán estar checando este video en nuestra plataforma de YouTube, en donde estará disponible en breve. Y los esperamos nuevamente el próximo miércoles. Gracias también a todas las personas que estuvieron acompañándonos en Zoom y, por supuesto, que estuvieron compartiendo comentarios y felicitaciones a través de nuestra red social de Facebook. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles en casa.
Will I like to thank too to all our not English speakers that are joining us from Italy, from Russia, from Brazil. Thank you very much for joining our transmission, and please make sure you follow all our social media, and we see you on our next episode next Wednesday. Thank you very much from IDA Academia here in Mexico City. Bye.